So now that we've bribed you all and all that, we're going to spend the next 71 minutes talking about upgrade. Now, to be clear, this session is about upgrading from SharePoint 2010 to SharePoint 2013, but it's with an eye on 2016. So this is not a session on upgrading to 2016. Is anybody going to leave? Anybody?
There's a line out there. We're good. We'll be
You can leave for other reasons. That's fine. But all right, so we'll go through this quick. This is me. This is an artist rendition of me. It's actually a mugshot, one of those crime scene things.
They got your bad hair.
They did. They got my bad hair. So I'm Todd Clint. I'm a SharePoint MVP. Have been for a few years now, which basically means I don't shut up. I speak, I blog, I tweet, I talk about SharePoint a lot. I've got a personal blog there at toddclint.com/blog. I cover SharePoint stuff. I cover other Microsoft stuff, Windows Phone, tablets, that kind of thing. Shane and I both work for Rackspace, the world's premier hosting company. Managed hosting company. You can find out about all of our SharePoint offerings at sharepoint.rackspace.com. But for goodness sakes, just go out to www.rackspace.com too, because we got all kinds of fun stuff. There's my email address. You can email me if you'd like to make some complaints about Shane. I'm happy to forward those on to HR for you. We can take care of that. But shoot me questions, whatever. The easier the question, the more likely you are to get an answer and a correct answer. So keep that in mind. I'm normally on Twitter, though I'm not right now because I'm giving you guys my focus. And also every Monday night, except for last Monday night, I do a live SharePoint podcast. You can find out the information there. I do it live, and then I put it on YouTube and toasters and everything. But you can find out there. I basically just talk about what's gone on in SharePoint in the last week.
All right. So my name is Shane Young. I am from wonderful Cincinnati, Ohio. I have been a SharePoint MVP for 10 years.
9 months longer than me.
It's very important. 10 years.
Or as Shane likes to say it, one whole person longer than me.
Exactly. So done a lot of the SharePoint infrastructure stuff along the way with my friend Todd here at Rackspace. And quite recently, I've actually gotten into more of the private cloud stuff, the Microsoft private cloud and cloud platform and Azure. I'm hiring for Azure stuff if anybody's looking, just saying. But so there's my Twitter, my email. Definitely feel free to reach on out and say hello.
Yep. Okay, so they made us put in an agenda slide. Really going to hit the first two. I don't know that we're going to have time for a demo because we've got a lot of information. This session, we've done it as a 4-hour session. We've done it as a 2.5-hour session. And now we're having to squeeze it down into a 75-minute session. So we're going to probably do the Micro Machine Man thing here pretty quick to get through everything. We probably don't have a demo to show you, but we have a demo from a previous time that we're going to give you a link to. So you can see all the stuff we talked about. And we're going to be around all day, so if you want to see anything, we'll be at the Rackspace booth or whatever. Probably won't get to the live demo, though. Plus, I don't know that I trust the internet here.
Can't imagine why.
All right. So Shane and I have been doing SharePoint since it was on tablets, and you had to submit things with chisel and rock. And so we kind of look at things with that perspective. When you went from 2007 to 2010, you had these 3 options. You could do the gradual upgrade, which was you installed SharePoint 2010 on top of, or 2007 on top of 2003, and you upgraded your site collections one at a time. That was kind of our favorite. That was the one we used the most.
Yep.
93, 94% of the time. You could do database attach, which means you stood up another farm, and back then, those were the dark ages. The machines were actually machines. You had like boxes with fans and stuff. It was crazy. So you had to stand up another one of those, move your databases across, attach them, cross your fingers, hope they upgraded. Or you could do an in-place upgrade, which was like the Russian roulette of SharePoint upgrades.
Yeah, but it was Russian roulette with a fully loaded gun, right? It was successful exactly 0% of the time.
And the great thing about it is when it wasn't successful, the good news was there was no troubleshooting to figure out because you had exactly one option. Fdisk and format. If your upgrade failed, everything was destroyed. Smoke, plumes of it came out. And that was not a very popular method. So going from 2007 to 2010, we lost the gradual upgrade. We lost the upgrade method that we used most of the time. And the reason for that is because Microsoft knew they can only test so much. So they said if we get rid of one of these, we can test the other 2 more thoroughly. And it turned out to not be too bad. Database attach was still there. We could still do that. But the in-place upgrade, they kind of made it the best of both worlds with gradual.
We took like half the bullets out of the gun, right?
Yeah. Now you only had 3 bullets in the. But it was pretty good. It worked pretty well. If things failed, you could fix it. Try the upgrade again. It wasn't too bad. We did a bunch of those. And the good news with that is it didn't require a second set of servers. You could keep things. You could do that in place. So then we went from 2010 to 2013.
Got to vote somebody off the island.
We voted another upgrade method off the island, so we had a database attached. So the good news is, when you're trying to figure out which way you're going to upgrade from 2010 to 2013, the thought process is pretty simple. I think most of you will be able to figure it out. And we found out this morning in the last session that the upgrade method from 2013 to 2016 is also database attached. So we've been curious now for 3 years what was going to happen when they had to vote another method off. Turns out they didn't. So we've got that to look forward to for another version. Now, I told you that the thought process was pretty simple. I did want to mention one other thing. There is a super secret method. Yep. The methods we've been talking about are the out-of-the-box methods. You know, you buy your SharePoint licenses. There is the option of using a whole bunch of different third-party tools. And all those folks are down at the exhibit hall. And I'm talking about folks like ShareGate and AvePoint and Metalogix. Is that all of them?
That's the three I would have named.
Yeah. And so that's the thing that you can do. And we're going to talk about in a later slide why you would do that. But you do have a couple of options. So that's kind of the story with the upgrade.
Yeah, well, I think important with the third-party stuff, with those tools, they're also great if one of your goals is to rearrange, right? So you've upgraded a couple of versions now. You kind of got a big mess.
Yeah, have any of you guys ever screwed up SharePoint? Any of you? One guy. Well, it's too bad.
How many times has your information architecture changed in the last 10 years since you started using SharePoint?
We're creating all of our site collections by a guy's name. And that guy leaves.
So these third-party tools are ideal for not only getting through the upgrade, but being able to rearrange post-upgrade or during the upgrade. So these have become a lot more commonplace. It used to be kind of 10% of our customers use it. Now I'd say a large percentage of people that are upgrading in the last 6 months are starting to migrate to third-party stuff.
Yeah, so let's talk about that a little bit now. One of the things that we're going to tell you, though, is it's not an either-or. So, you've got some site collections that are fine, that you're going to be able to upgrade with the out-of-the-box method, but then you've always got those problem children. Those are the ones that call you all the time, and they were the first ones to download SharePoint Designer and do unspeakable and horrible things to SharePoint. We all know who they are. We've got those special kids. So you can mix and match. You can take all of the non-special kids, move them into their own databases, the easy upgrades, and do those that way. And then with kid gloves, with the special kids, get the third-party tool and start fixing some of those problems. But you don't have to do either or. So if you've got 10 terabytes of information in your SharePoint 2010 farm, you don't need to license the tool for 10 terabytes. Maybe it's only 1 terabyte or one user, however they're licensed, I don't even know. But you don't have to do it all or nothing. So that's an important thing as you're looking at it. If you've got those one-offs, that's fine. Grab a tool, take care of those.
And real quick for perspective, so how many of you are still on SharePoint 2003?
Anybody? We had somebody, I did a pre-con session on Sunday. There we go. We did a pre-con session on Sunday. There was a 2003.
So 7?
That's pretty good.
10?
I don't know.
How many of you are on 13 and just want to see what you did wrong?
Fair amount of the room there.
Yeah, so and I also, with 3, right, we joked, but I did this in Cincinnati a couple weeks ago, and I swear to you, a quarter of the room was still in 2003. We're behind the times in Cincinnati.
I can only assume that's because all the better sessions were full, and these people just wanted to sit down, and all the charging stations were full. Yeah, so that's good. So let's talk about that. What if you are on 2007? What do you do? So there are no shortcuts from 2007 to 2003. You kind of got 2 methods. Number one is to do the regular 2007 to 2010 upgrade, which is the methods that we talked about. But in this case, you're probably going to do database attach. And that requires on 2007 Service Pack 2. So those of you that have SharePoint 2007, how many of you do not have Service Pack 2 on that farm? Wow, I'm surprised. Because we had a lot of customers who did horrible things to 2007, tremendously bad things, and then for whatever reason, couldn't get the upgrades to run. They would time out, they would fail, all kinds of stuff. So they couldn't get to Service Pack 2 to get to 2010. So if you guys are already on Service Pack 2, you're in good shape. So then one method you could use is to take those databases that are in 2007, post SP2, bounce them through a temporary 2010 farm, upgrade them to 2010, and then bounce them into a 2013 farm and bring them up to 2013. That's one way to do it. The other way, buy a third-party tool. So that's the easy way. These third-party tools kind of talk to SharePoint like clients do. So you can run the third-party tool on your desktop or your user's desktop. Point it to 2007, point it to 2013, drag and drop over, and that gets your stuff over there. Different tools have different limitations, but that's one way around it.
Yeah. And since you brought up service packs, we don't have a slide on it, but one of the important things to know is pretty much every update that comes out for SharePoint after the next version comes out. So in our case of 2013 is out, right? All the 2010 updates that keep rolling out, those are almost all focused around making upgrade run smoother, faster, working through the bugs. So when you're thinking about patching, you're like, oh, I made the minimum requirements, but just keep in mind that the more patches you add, generally speaking, the happier the upgrade experience will be. So I don't know, it's just always worth knowing that those patches, you're like, oh, why would I patch 2010? We're going to 2013 anyway, because they're going to make your life getting to 2013 easier.
Yeah, a great example of that is Service Pack 2 for SharePoint 2007 was the first one that had this pre-upgrade check that we're going to talk about. And it was a thing that went through your farm and told you all the things that were wrong. And it had a bug in it that told you every time that your content database's schemas were modified.
Yikes.
That is like the most terrifying thing ever. That is horrible. That's worse than like saying we've given the developers full control of our farm. It's even worse than that. But it had a bug in that thing, so subsequent patches fixed that bug, fixed other things. So Shane's absolutely right. Make sure you're on your later patches.
Oh, and that was recorded. You said I was right.
As soon as it came out of my mouth, I felt dirty. A chill went down my spine.
All right, so when we look at databases, right, generally speaking, we always start with content databases, because that's really what we care about the most. So all your content databases, we can absolutely support those. When we think about MySites, right, all those personal/Bob, personal/Mary, all of those are just content as well. Now, on the next slide, we're going to talk about MySites a little more, but for the perspective of this slide, MySites are content databases. So that should be your focus of this upgrade method. From there, you can see the different service apps listed that are available to be upgraded via database attach. But what you really want to do is you want to ask yourself, what's in there? Is there value in me upgrading that particular database? Right? Maybe you set up a performance point in 2010, but you never used it. Why would you go through the pain and suffering of upgrading that database when you just go create a new one on the 2013 side?
Yeah, and that brings up another thing, and I'm pretty sure we don't have a slide on this either, but one of my mantras when I'm talking to people or doing upgrades myself, one of the things I always remind myself, don't upgrade crap. You can save yourself a lot of trouble if you always tell yourself, don't upgrade crap. So the example that Shane gave was Performance Point. Somebody saw the white paper came out, they went through all 67 pages of it, got it working, felt great about themselves, bragged to all their friends, and then never used it. So now you're looking at doing an upgrade. Do you upgrade that? If you're not using it, don't upgrade it. There's no value to it. And that's for content as well, certainly for service apps. But for content as well, if you've got content that you're not using or content, if you've got the Fab 40 or something, you're going from 2007 to 2010, don't upgrade them. It's a great time to look at all of your stuff and see what makes the cut to the next version.
Yeah. Another great example of that is our friend the search databases, right? So search can be upgraded, kind of, right? It's going to bring over the DB mappings and things like that.
The settings.
But search changes pretty radically from 2010 to 2013. And by pretty radically, I mean polar opposite almost.
Yeah.
So it's a good time to look at that one and say, yes, we kind of wanted that stuff, but it's a good time to maybe redevelop your search strategy and work through it instead of trying to keep the old search way of doing things alive and well.
Yeah, Chris Rock has a bit, I can't remember where it is, he talks about just because you can teach a bear to dance doesn't mean it's a good idea. Same with this. Just because you can upgrade search doesn't mean it's a good idea necessarily. It works and it's fine, but you're probably going to be better off if you create a new one if you don't have anything special in there. User profile is a special one, in many phrases, special. Your user profile service has 3 databases: social, sync, and profile. Profile database stores your people information, your about me things, their habits, their pets' names, all that kind of stuff. The social database is all the tagging and newsfeed, and the sync database is kind of scratch space. It's kind of the way when the user profile service is mixing and matching things from AD and SharePoint, it's kind of writing things on the back of its hand and all that. When you do the upgrade, you do not upgrade the sync database. You can upgrade the social and the profile, but not the sync, because it's transient stuff. And for all of these service apps, the way that you upgrade these, the way that you do the database attach, is you bring the database from your 2010 farm, we'll say your user profile, you bring your social, you bring your profile, you restore them to your 2013 SQL instance, so where all your 2013 production stuff's going to be. Change the permissions, because the permissions are in the backup. And hopefully, you're using a completely different set of service accounts in every SharePoint farm you have. That's like Todd's golden rule number 1, right after don't upgrade crap. All of your SharePoint farms, test, production, 2010, 2013, whatever, should have their own service accounts, because that keeps you from jumping farms accidentally and destroying things you didn't mean to destroy. I don't think we have time to tell the story about how I did that, but I did that once.
It ended with Todd getting Wendy's applications.
Yeah, I got Wendy's applications, McDonald's applications slid under my door at work for months. So because you're going to follow that golden rule and your 2013 farm has different service accounts, when you restore those 2010 databases into SQL, you need to make sure that your 2013 service accounts have permission to them. So you've done all that. And then you go into your 2013 farm, and for like user profile, you create a new user profile service app. So do it in central admin, do it the way you've always done it. But when you specify your social and profile database names, give it the names of the databases you just restored. And it will go through and it will say, hey, I need to create a social database. Hey, there's already one here. And it takes it and upgrades it. And then it goes to the sink and it says, hey, there's not one here. I should create one of those. And it does it. And that's how you do all of these. Manage metadata, BCS, secure store, all of them. Just create the service app the way you normally would, but point at the database you've already got out there.
Yeah. So speaking of user profiles, you want to talk about MySites and OneDrive and all that fun stuff?
I don't mind if I do.
Oh, look at that. I knew it slide
I've
was
even got a slide for it and everything.
A new slide.
You guys don't understand how big of a deal that is that I added a new slide. We've been doing this deck for a while, and normally it's, I put a new slide in just because I love you guys. So starting with SharePoint 2013 Service Pack 1, we got this ability to redirect our on-prem MySites to Office 365. So that's pretty cool. MySites, for a long time, have been the bane of our existence because users put all kinds of stuff in there. All kinds of stuff that we don't have to worry about, and our databases get big and it's ugly. So we have the option, starting in SharePoint 2013 Service Pack 1, of redirecting those to SharePoint Online. So the people that we'd be able to do this for is if you've got some kind of a volume license, like when you bought the Office clients, you got some SharePoint Online stuff with that. If you can create those, you can do that with SharePoint 2013. So then the question becomes, do I want to upgrade my SharePoint 2010 MySites at all? Or if I do I want them to upgrade them to the cloud so that I don't have to worry about the storage and I don't have to worry about all that management? That's an option for you. And they snuck that in to SharePoint 2010. Did you guys know you can do that in SharePoint 2010 now? You can redirect your MySites in SharePoint 2010 to Office 365. It's a real deal. If you install the February 2015 cumulative update or later, you now have that option inside of there. And it's pretty simple to set up on the SharePoint side. You basically have to give it the URL to your MySite tenant host, or your MySite host and your tenant. So it's going to be like shanestinks-my.sharepoint.com, something like that. And then you have to create an audience because it's not all or nothing. So you can have some of your users doing it. You can have a pilot. You can have a rollout. Have your IT folks do it and then add people. Like I said, it's just a SharePoint audience. So you can do that and move those out there.
Yeah. But when you do that, right, it's very important to note that it doesn't just magically pick it up from your farm and put it to the cloud.
There is no magic. There is no magic. It does not migrate any content.
So your users are going to have to manually move all of that cruft that you're trying to get out of your farm out there on their own.
Up in a Microsoft's farm. Make it their problem. And it's not tough. There's a couple things. So again, those third-party tools are great. You can say on-prem MySite, Office 365 MySite, copy, and it will do that. The other thing that you can do is if they just got files and it's nothing complicated, they can open up their MySite in 2010 or 2013 in Explorer view, open their new Office 365 MySite in Explorer view, lasso the files, drag them over, just copies them over.
Yeah. But how do they get to their 2013 if they've pointed it out there, right?
Yeah, so what happens? So the way this works is when you set this up and they become part of the audience, now when they click that OneDrive link in 2013 or the hysterical-looking MySite link in 2010, because when you add this that patch and it adds that, it looks like somebody photoshopped a button on the menu. It looks terrible. When they click that, it automatically redirects them to their online MySite. So like Shane said, how do they get to their old stuff? There's a couple of ways to do it. Number one, that site collection is still there. If they can remember the URL or if they've got a shortcut to it, it's still there. It's just not where the link takes them, so they can manually browse there. The other thing they can do is they can go into their About Me, their profile, and there's a link in there to get to it. So the data doesn't go away, it just changes that link.
Another great example of where a third-party tool might be very handy, though, right? If you start telling your users they got to move their own data, it's not going to happen. So you being able to do it programmatically is not a bad idea.
Yep. One thing to point out in this is that the authentication piece gets a little tricky. Because what you don't want is your users to have two different usernames. Because what happens when they have two different usernames and two different passwords?
They call twice as much.
They call you. They talk to you. They IM you. They pester you. They take time out of your busy day where you're emailing your mom and watching pandas sneeze on the internet or whatever you do. Nobody likes it when end users call. So what we can do is we can set up, depending on how fancy you want to get with the authentication, you can set up same sign-on, which is same username, same password, or if you want to get fancy, you can set up ADFS and get single sign-on. So the difference being with same sign-on, when they click that link, they're going to get the Office 365 login page, and they're going to go, I thought I already logged in, you know, Todd at whatever, blah, and it logs them in. Same sign-on. It's a sync. With ADFS, there's cookies and things involved, and it just pops them through. The first one, the same sign-on, is really, really easy to set up. Anybody could do it. Shane could do it. It's really simple.
4 steps.
Yeah, the marketing thing they say is 4 clicks. It's a touch more than that. But there's a tool it's in preview now, but it should be RTM fairly soon, called Azure AD Connect. And it's wizard driven. It reminds me of the Choose Your Own Adventure books I read when I was a little kid. You know, you've jumped into Active Directory. Do you want to do a sync or a single sign-on? I want to do a sync. It's really simple. You log in with an account that's got permission to AD. You give it an account that has permission to your Azure AD, and it just syncs things up. Works pretty well. And we demoed it on Sunday in our thing. But that's something. The other thing that we'll tell you about that, though, 2013 makes this hybrid thing kind of easy. One of the things I've seen about 2016 is going to be all about hybrid. All about making it easy for you to move your stuff on-prem up into the cloud and back down in. So you want to get this authentication piece figured out, and you want to do it right, because that is the bedrock for all of this hybrid stuff. So if you do the Azure AD thing, if you do ADFS, think of that. Keep that in mind. You're not just doing this for MySites. You're not just doing this for OneDrive for Business. This is the foundation for the next 5 years of your SharePoint farm. So give it some thought.
Yeah, and that's another thing important to note, right? So you've heard Todd and I harp on before that you all should be very proficient in PowerShell, right? If you're not there already, that should be a key task, assuming you want to stay in the Windows world for the next umpteen years.
Maybe they could be notes administrators.
Yeah, you don't need PowerShell to do notes.
You don't need PowerShell for notes.
But so one of the things that I think has become more and more obvious over the last year to us is that Azure AD sounds like a really dumb idea at first, especially if you're just an on-prem kind of person. Azure AD is going to be the glue that holds the future together.
Yep.
So I think the more that you can learn about that, and the sooner you can do it, talking about just improving your resume. Not that I'm here to tell you guys to get new jobs, but better Azure AD skills is going to do nothing but progress, because everything is going to this hybrid model. And the sooner that you're comfortable with things like ADFS or the directory sync products, I think it's just going to benefit you as you continue to grow over the next few years. So yep. Azure AD is worth an investment on your time.
Yep. And let's be clear, Azure AD is not spinning up a VM in Azure and installing Active Directory on it. Oh. Azure AD is a service called Azure AD, and it shows up in your Azure account. And there's a free version of it. There's a premium version of it. They'll let you give them some money for it. There's a couple of versions in the middle. But it is a service. It's not a domain controller. It's a thing. So it's good stuff. I think we've hit that one. That's been some of the fun stuff we've been dealing with lately.
We did a good job there for a new slide.
So did we cover the 2016? The skipping that version? I don't think we did that.
Oh no, you did not say those words.
So I meant to do that. Not only was I going to add a new slide, I was going to change this slide. In Bill Bear's session last hour, he mentioned very specifically that you will not be able to upgrade directly from SharePoint 2010 to SharePoint 2016. There had been some speculation, there had been some rumors. I think Bill kind of put it to rest. You will not be able to go from 2010 to 2016. And I bring that up because as I've been talking to people on the conference floor and on my podcast and that, I've had a few people that have said to me, I'm on 2010 now, I'm not even going to bother with 2013 because 2016 is going to be out right around the corner. Migrating is no fun, I'm just not going to do it, I'm going to go right to 2016. So here is my thoughts on that. I think that's a bad idea for a couple of reasons. Like Bill said last hour, we're a year away from SharePoint 2016. A year away. They're saying second quarter of next year. We're a year away. And so it comes out, we'll say, the end of the second quarter is June 30th. So we'll say, 11:59 on the night of June 30th is when it's going to come out. You're not going to install it in production the first day. You're just not gonna. You're going to install in a test farm, and you're going to play with it for a couple months. You're going to figure stuff out, and then you're going to start thinking about migrating. And it's going to be the end of 2016, beginning of 2017, before you really think about using 2016 in production. Do you want to stay on 2010 till 2017? You probably don't. So you're a long ways out from using 2016. So our recommendation is go ahead, get into 2013. You don't want to be N-2 when 2016 comes out. You want to be at the latest one. Is anybody thinking about skipping 2013? Realistically, I was going to say you got to raise your hand. You've been outed. So yeah, hopefully you don't do that. You don't want to fall. You don't want to keep falling farther and farther behind because then a jump is just going to be farther and farther.
You'd be the guy in the session, I'm like, who's got 2003? And you're like, yeah.
I was just going to skip 2007 and go right to 2010. Yeah, that's
straight to 2013?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, you don't want to be that. And the other thing is it's going to be jarring for your users too. Because the move from 2010 to 2013 is a little bit, but not horrible. They can figure it out. The move from 2013 to 2016 is going to be a little bit more, but it's going to be huge compared to 2010. And again, the bigger the change, the more frightened your users get. They frighten easily as it is. You just don't want to make it a big deal.
Now, we keep moving site settings, though, right? From left to right.
Left, right, left,
right. So if
right.
you skip 13, you don't have to deal with it moving to the right.
I only install the odd-numbered SharePoints so that I get site settings on the left.
Is anybody else annoyed by the constant...
Yeah, so for those of you that haven't noticed, in 2007 it was on the left, and then in 2010 they put it on the right.
And told us why it was great that they moved it to the right.
Yep, and then they realized that when... Or do I have it backwards?
I don't know.
No, I have it backwards. Yeah, in 2007 it was on the right. But that stunk because if you had anybody who screwed a page up and made it super wide, you could never get to it. You had to scroll over. So then in 2010, they moved it over to the left, which was awesome. And then somebody's like, oh, we got to do it to them. Should we do it to them? Oh, yeah, we're going to do it to them. So then they moved it from the left to the right, and then they upped their game. Not only did they move it back to the other side, they made it a gear. So what's the problem with a gear on the right side? It's right below the gear in IE. That's the IE settings. So I'm on the phone with my mom. Yeah, Mom, you got to do the thing. Yeah, go to the gear. The other gear. The gear below the gear. No, not that gear. Oh. So I can't wait to see what they do in 2016. So long story short on this slide, you don't want to skip 2013.
You think it's the same guys trying to run the world out of GUIDs?
Yes. And so that was another thing they talked about last hour was this whole idea that URLs will follow files. That you can rename a file and move a file and it's going to be the same URL. In the back of my head, I'm thinking, does that just mean every URL is going to have a GUID? Because you can't have a file name, because then if you rename the file. And so yeah, another part of that campaign to run the world out of GUIDs.
All right, so this is pretty core stuff, right? This is back to the basics. Yep. So 2010 and 2013 cannot exist on the same hardware. Hopefully that's not a surprise to anyone, so you're going to have to plan for new. The good news, right, is no one uses hardware anymore to be new VMs.
Nope, it's all cloud, whatever that is.
So SharePoint 2010 RTM or later is supported. We already talked about we want to see you guys upgrading your 2010 to the latest and greatest. It just makes the upgrade go a little smoother.
Yep, but this is one of those things where having Service Pack 2 as a requirement to upgrade 2007 was horrible for a lot of people. It was really a hardship. And so, we cried to our friends at Microsoft, and they're like, all right, if you promise to shut up, well, So they've done us a favor by making it that RTM. That was a good advance.
It was. But so speaking of hardware, so without spending 2 hours on architecture.
And go.
One of the things that I would say here is that generally speaking, you need about twice as much hardware as you had for 2010 to run 2013. Now, that doesn't mean if you have 5 servers today, you absolutely have to have 10 servers tomorrow, but you need to look at how taxed those 5 servers are in 2010 and say, hey, if I double that amount of tax, do I need to go to 7 or 8 VMs to do things correctly? Also, you're going to find that the number of servers that you need in 2013 gets bigger for a couple of changes they made. How many of you are using Office Web Apps?
In 2010.
Yeah, right? I'm confused.
Sorry about that.
So one of the important things about that, in 2010, Office Web Apps had to be on a SharePoint server, right? SharePoint 2013, Office Web Apps have to be on their own server. So now you're adding servers to your farm. How many of you use Search? If you all don't raise your hands, I'm going to beat you.
He's just going to come through slap every person that's not raising their hand.
Search, he's just not a very friendly person anymore. He does not get along with others. He was an only child, maybe.
I don't know where you get this.
In every farm that we've seen, Search has had to be pulled off and put on its own box or multiple of its own servers. So as you're thinking about how you're going to scale up, right, Office Web Apps is one. Search is an absolute must. It eats servers for lunch.
Yeah, it doesn't like to share resources, so we like to get it off on its own box. so that as it's grinding itself into the dirt, it's not hurting our web front ends or hurting our user profiles or anything like that.
Yep. Then you're going to have to consider things like the workflow engine changes. So there's 2010 workflows and 2013 workflows. Those can be its own servers. There's a lot of reasons. I'll stop talking about architecture, but there's a lot of reasons you can end up with more servers.
Yep. Another thing that Bill said in the last session was that the hardware requirements for 2016 are about the same as 2013. So it's the same 80 gig C drive, 4 or 8 processors or cores, I can't remember, and then 16 to 24 gig of RAM for a standalone box, 12 to 16 for a farm box. So that's about what 2010 is, 2013. It's about the same, but it's kind of scaling out as opposed to scaling up.
A lot more hybrid, right? So that's
you're going to be pushing it all in the cloud, so you don't need
just need a big network connection.
Yep. So here's a slide. We didn't know what else to put on the title for this slide, so notes. One of the things that Shane and I did wrong the first couple times we went from 2010 to 2013 was we did not add our managed paths. So if you go back to the slide that we looked at that showed the database types that we could upgrade, the config database was conspicuously absent. We cannot upgrade our config database. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, but there's a lot of things that are stored in that database, and since we can't bring it over, we can't upgrade them. Managed paths are one of those things. So those are those things that are in central admin for each web application. You've got wildcard managed paths for /sites, explicit managed paths for other things. Those are stored in the config database. So what happens when you take that database and you bring it over to 2013, 2013 scans the database and it looks at all the URLs to all the site collection and says, oh, you've got a /sites / Shane stinks. There's no managed path for this. I better create one, explicit managed path. And then it goes to the next site collection and says, oh, you've got a site collection at /sites / Shane still stinks. I better create an explicit managed path for that one. And it walks down every site collection you have in that database and creates a managed path for every single one of them. That's bad for a couple of reasons. Number one, it's a performance hit. Every request that hits SharePoint has to get compared against that managed path list, because SharePoint needs to break that URL down and say which part is server name, host name, which part is managed path, which part is site collection name, which part is web, whatever. And part of that decision tree is those managed path settings. So you don't want to have a lot of those because every request has to go through that list. So what you need to do if you've got wildcard managed paths is add them before you attach your database. The other thing is if you have explicit managed paths, then it kind of shoehorns you into what you can and can't add, because then you can't add the wildcard afterwards.
Very confusing. So another one, always upgrade the database that has the root site collection first, right? The / site collection. Because what happens is, even though we always say, site collections are completely self-contained, they all just look at themselves, in reality, every site collection always looks back to the root site collection for some different web controls and things like that.
Infopath stuff.
Yep. Some web resources, AXD, for example.
Whatever that is. I don't even know what those letters mean in that order.
I don't know what AXD extensions are, actually. But the important thing is that what you can do is if you upgrade just /sites / I hate Todd, and you upgrade just that one site collection, as you go to test it, it's all broken.
It won't upgrade is what will happen. SharePoint won't do that.
It runs faster. But when you go to run things there and you test it, it's like, wait, this is broken, this is broken. The upgrade must have failed. In reality, it's just you didn't have a root site collection for all the things it was referencing back. So
all the forums about how much he hates me and the online surveys about how much he hates me.
PowerPoints. Yes. But so one of the tricks, though, so say for your testing purposes, you can't upgrade that root site collection, right? It's a 2 terabyte site collection. Like, I don't know how the hell I'm going to do that, right? Especially for testing. You can just go and create a normal, team site-based site collection at the root.
In 2013.
In 2013, right? And then go attach and upgrade the database at /site / Todd is a horrible person. And when you do that, all those referenced files will be there. So it doesn't have to be the original root, but you need something at the root no matter what. Okay. Very important.
You guys laugh about those names. For the longest time, Shane's password for a certain thing was I hate Todd. And I know this because I used it to log in.
He called me I've got to log into your account. What is it? What is it? It's an emergency. I hate Todd. Yeah, I know you hate me. Yeah.
No. Past that. It was Todd is ugly for a while. There was so yeah, it's a real thing. It happens.
Actually, one of my accounts still is I hate Todd. If you're going to hack my accounts, one of them is I hate Todd. How about that?
Yep. So another thing that we're going to tell you is try to keep the same URLs in your new environment as you have in your old environment. Part of that is it's easier for your users if they've got shortcuts, things like that. It's easier for you to keep track of also. It does cause a little bit of confusion when you're testing. because if you've got portal.company.com in production in 2010, and now you're going into 2013 and you're creating portal.company.com, how do you test it? Because DNS is pointing to production. There's a couple of things that we do for that. One of the things you can do is you can edit your host files on any boxes that you're testing with. That's kind of tedious. The other thing that we'll do is we'll create the web app with the correct URL, portal.company.com, whatever, and then we'll create an alternate access mapping for portal-test or portal-demo or whatever, and then put that in DNS. So the reason for that is because there's a few things that SharePoint does when it creates a web app that kind of get set in stone, get saved in the config database, things like host headers, stuff like that. So what you want to do is always create the web app with the most correct URL first, and then add the one-offs if you want to test it or do whatever. The other reason that that's important is because if you're bringing databases in, if you've got any links that are relative or absolute links, you want to make sure that you know which environment you're staying in.
Alerts get really mad.
Alerts get mad. Another thing about this that we kind of want to add is, part of the goal of this session is to talk about being cloud ready and moving to 2016. For those of you that don't already have fully qualified domain names for your URLs, start thinking about that. Start thinking about moving to that. If your company's going to HTTP portal right now, think about moving them over to http://portal.company.com. As you start getting fully qualified domain names, it's going to make some of that cloud stuff easier. Like one of the things is when you do your Azure AD bit, you actually have to own the domain that you're trying to connect, the DNS domain for the AD you're trying to connect. So Sunday, we did a OneDrive for Business class all day long, 8 hours. And I bought the domain and went out to GoDaddy and bought odfbdemo.com, bought it, live on the internet. And then when I created my AD in my demo environment, I gave that the DNS name. Because when I start wiring up all this Azure AD stuff, when I go into Azure AD, I say, I'm going to have a whole bunch of users come in, and their suffix, because we want to keep the same sign-on, their suffix is going to be odfbdemo.com. And Azure says, okay, that's cool, but I need to know how to get there when they hit me and try to log in. So I'm going to go out and I'm going to add a record to your DNS that points me back to you so I know what's going on. So if you've got stuff that's got weird URLs internally, if you're going to start moving that way, you got to start thinking about that strategy. So our advice is to try to keep the same URLs, but if your URLs are kind of wonky, again, look to the future a little bit and try to figure that out so as you make that jump to 2016. It's a little easier.
Yeah. Well, and speaking of the future, it's not if you're going to move that way, it's when, right?
It's true.
As we look at as the roadmap for 2016 continues to evolve, you're going to see that every 2016 farm, not every, most 2016 farms are going to have some type of touch to Azure and Office 365. Yeah. It's just going to be a fact of life.
Yeah, so one of the things they announced, Monday and then reiterated today, is that sometime this year, I think they've said, there's going to be an update to SharePoint 2013 that's going to create a new search service application. And that search service application is going to be able to upload its index to your Office 365 tenant so you can use things like the Office Graph on your on-premises data. So it's things like that. You're like, I'm never going to go to the cloud. Oh, that Office Graph is awesome, though. Those are the kind of things, that's how they're getting you. Little gateway drugs here and there to get you into the cloud.
That's not nice to say.
The little ones here and there, you're like, oh, this isn't so bad. I could do some of this cloud stuff.
They love you. They're doing it for your benefit. They're not trying to get you.
So even if you're right now, you're like, we'll never go to the cloud. You just never know what they're going to pull out next. So there's the version numbers. 14 is 2010, 15 is 2013, 16 is 2016.
Seems obvious. Next.
I'm trying.
Press the button.
I pressed the button. It's not touchscreen.
It is touchscreen.
It is touchscreen. Holy crap.
Oh, right now Todd's distracted. He'll be back in 5 minutes.
Well, I always say that because we did that OneDrive for Business demo Sunday, and Laura kept touching the screen, and I was making fun of her because it wasn't a touch screen.
Yeah, I mean, there's always reason to make fun of Laura. All right, one of the nice things about SharePoint 2013, the versions drive me crazy, is that you can create a SharePoint 2010 site collection. Right? When you go into Central Admin, create a site collection, there's a little drop-down where you can change it from 2013 to 2010. The reason that we like to point this out is when you do your first pass at trying to work through an upgrade, what is the easiest, there's no way that your data is corrupt and that you cannot possibly mess up method to try and upgrade out. Go to your 2013 farm, create a 2010 site collection, and walk through the upgrade process. Because there is, it's several steps, right? There's the whole preview site collections, and there's the whole, automating the flow.
Yep,
so this is a great tool.
Yep.
Yeah, absolutely just a great tool for you guys to jump in there and try it out and not be able to say, oh, my data must be bad. That's why the upgrade doesn't work.
Yep. The other great benefit to this is they put this in there to ease the upgrade, but also to ease the end user experience. So the idea being that you can install 2013 in the background, move your 2010 databases over to your 2013 farm, don't upgrade anything, and Monday morning when your users come in, it all looks the same. And then as they go about their daily business and you create them more site collections, they still look like 2010. And then after you get the bottom, the back end figured out, then you can start upgrading site collections and working through that. And all the while, your users are still creating 2010 site collections. You don't have to worry about training them right away. So that's a really nice feature. And it differs from the SharePoint 2007 thing. We haven't hit this very hard yet.
Yeah, let's do it now.
When you went from 2007 to 2010, you had this visual upgrade thing that happened.
Lipstick on a pig.
Lipstick on a pig. So you would bring your database in, SharePoint 2010 would churn and churn and churn, and days and weeks would go by, and then poof, it's done. And everything still looked like 2007. In the background, it was all 2010, but it was just using the 2007 master pages and CSS and all that to make it look like 2007. And then at the web level, the SP web level, you could go in and say, I want to look at the new version of this. And 2010 would come up, and your images would be all wrong, and everything. The little snowflakes you had that followed the cursor didn't work, that kind of stuff. And you could switch back to 2007 and fix whatever was wrong, go to 2010, preview it again. And then when it finally worked and the snowflakes followed your cursor, you could set it to 2010 and leave it and say, I'm done. That's how that worked. 2010 to 2013 does not work that way. 2010 to 2013, when you attach the database, it's just the database schema, just the really low-level bits that get upgraded. Site collections really don't get touched. They're still actually 2010 site collections. Then at the site collection level, not the web level, the site collection level, you can upgrade. But it's not a preview. It's not a, you can't go in and out, you can't try it. It actually physically changes the bits of the site collection. So Shane talked about the preview site collections. That creates a second site collection, a copy of your site collection, that you look at in 2013 mode, and you check your snowflakes and make sure they still follow your cursor and all that. And then if it's okay, then you go back to your original site collection and upgrade that one. So it's a really different way of doing things, and there's no backsies. If you upgrade your 2010 site collection to 2013, congratulations, you got 2013, for better or for worse. Another interesting thing in Bill's session this morning, he talked about if you're upgrading from 2013 to 2016, all of your site collections have to be in 2013 mode, so mode 15. And he used a new phrase I'd never heard before. So we've talked about you can have version 14 site collections, which is 2010, version 15 site collections, which are 2013, or the 2010 site collections that you create in 2013, he called those 14 and a half. So you got your 14.5 site collections, which were created in 2013 as 2010. They all have to be 15 to go.
Yeah. And this brings up another one of those side points, but if you ever ask yourself, so why is the upgrade like this, right? Why is it that the site collection administrator now has to go through the upgrade process? The answer in 2013 to all your questions of why did Microsoft do this, you always say, how would this make SharePoint Online better? And there's the answer, right? SharePoint Online, they got a bunch of customers with a bunch of tenants, and when they wanted them to do the upgrade, did they want to swoop and upgrade everybody in the night? No, right? They want the customers to be able to flip the upgrade switch on their own terms. So SharePoint 2013 on-prem got a feature because SharePoint Online needed it.
Yep. We talked about the Office web apps. Again, you want them. The one change, another change, I guess, from the 2010 Office web apps is that with the 2013 Office web apps, they're on their own server and a bunch of different services can consume them. SharePoint can, Exchange can. If you've got the Outlook Anywhere web client, it can use the Office web apps. The product formerly known as Lync, now Skype for Business, though I just read this morning that apparently Microsoft's getting sued because Skype sounds like Sky, and Rupert Murdoch hasn't caused them enough problems, so he's going another round. So Lync can also use them. It's an open standard now. It's called WAPI, W-O-P-I, so any WAPI client can use the Office web apps as a WAPI server. So one thing we haven't talked about yet that we're going to in the next slide is authentication. All these crazy other server things like Workflow Manager and Office web apps and all that require claims. So for those of you in 2010, how many of you are using claims right now?
Oh, that's more than I thought.
My goodness, we've got some brave folks. Are you all skydivers too? And that's horrible. So and we'll talk about that in the next slide, but the Office web apps require claims, so you got that. And they require licensing, and that's kind of a volume license thing. That's changed over the last year or so. I'm not sure where that's at now, but they are licensed. Let's talk about authentication.
Yep. Claims is dominant, right? That's, I think, just the key message here.
Yep. So in 2010, Shane and I told everybody to create your web apps with classic authentication. It's the same thing that 2007 used and 2003 before it. But in 2013, to get all the cool bits, you need claims. And so one of the questions that I always get when I talk about this, I'm like, okay, your 2010 farm is classic. Your 2013 farm has to be claims. When do we switch? Because you can switch from classic to claims in 2010, and you can switch from classic to claims in 2013. My guidance on that is always do it in 2013. There's two reasons for that. Number one, what is another name for your 2010 environment? Production. What don't we like to do in production? Break things. And in 2010, claims breaks a few little things. It breaks search alerts and some things like that. So there's no benefit to having claims in 2010 and a whole lot of risk. And anytime you do that kind of stuff in production, you incur downtime that encourages users to call you. No one likes users. The other thing is in 2010, how many of you have looked at the white paper that talks about how to convert to claims in 2010? It's like 19 easy steps. You got to go through, you got to find every user, you got to do this, you got to do that. It's pretty scary, pretty painful. Now let's flash forward to 2013. What's your 2013 environment? It's pre-production because you got 2010 churning along, you've installed 2013, you've patched, you've done whatever. You've moved a couple databases over, you're testing things. Switch them to claims then. What happens if that explodes? Nothing. You delete the web app, you delete the databases, and you try again. Production still works is the important part. So that's reason number one. Reason number two is in 2013, have any of you converted from classic to claims? It is a single PowerShell commandlet. One line. No pipes, no nothing. Convert SP web application. Boom. And it works. That's all there is to it. Had a question, sir? There's one step. So as an IT pro, I like to be efficient. Some folks call it lazy. I prefer efficient. It is more efficient in 2013. Now, the 19 steps or whatever it is in 2010 breaks things down about what moving parts, the web app and the database and the users and all that. In 2013, it's one command that does it all. And so then the next question becomes, okay, I create my web app in Classic. I move a couple of databases over that are Classic. I convert to claims. Everything's good. Everybody can log in. They can use Office web apps. And then I forget about a database. And it's in Classic. If I attach it, I get a nastygram from SharePoint, which is the thing we've got in the next slide. What do I do? Because I've already run Convert SP web application. You just run it again. And Convert SP web application says, okay, I got two jobs. I got to convert this web application's authentication from Classic to claims, and then I got to go through and do a find with replace on all those Classic usernames and make them claims. So it's got its list of tasks in front of it and says, okay, I need to convert it to click. Hey, wait, this web application's already claims. Okay, and then it goes through all the users and it finds the ones in the database you just attached and it only converts them. It's the same line, one line every time. And this is what it looks like. So we've got a couple of slides later, but we've got this, this slide up here, this test SP content database. This is kind of how you find the problems in your content. And that error message on the bottom is the one that we care about for this. The one at the top, everybody gets that. That error message is free with SharePoint 2013. No extra charge. Everybody gets that error message. But the second one you get if you've got a Classic database and you're attaching it to a claims web app. And it says, hey, wait a minute, this doesn't look right. Nobody's going to be able to log in. We want to let you know about this. But the important thing is upgrade blocking. No. False. So it's giving you this error message and says, we can't log in anybody to this. It's the wrong authentication model. Everything's all screwed up. I'm going to let you attach it anyway. And so then you run your Convert SP content, or SP web application, and it fixes it all. So that's the way to do it in 2013. One other thing that we added to this slide is, again, when you're thinking about authentication, start thinking about Azure AD. Start thinking about what that's going to look like, because 2016, you're going to need it. So when you're setting all this up in 2013, start thinking about what your domains look like, what your usernames look like. Bill talked about in 2016, there's going to be this ability for on-prem to use things like Azure AD to share externally. So start thinking about that. This is that error message. This is the PowerShell that we talked about. So this is how you create a classic web app in 2013, because you can't do it in central admin anymore. The drop-down's not there. In 2013, it's all claims all the time. So this is how you create a classic web app in 2013. And then if you're curious, if you've created a few web apps, here's how you can tell which ones are which, or if you've switched one before, that's the easy way. And then that's the thing that you use to convert. Nothing to it. Even a caveman could do it. Nothing to it. Any questions about classic and claims? That's one's going to trip you up. Why do you want the classic if you're supposed to be using claims? All right, that's good. I should have covered that. The reason becomes if you're moving a bunch of stuff over, classic will work in the new environment until you convert. So maybe you don't want to do this. You're going to stage your databases, and you don't want to do it all, so you can move your databases in without having to run convert every time. So classic works in 2013, but it doesn't work with all the other stuff. So while your database is in classic, those users won't be able to use the Office web apps. You won't be able to use the workflow manager, the 2013 workflows. So it's just about how you're phasing your upgrades, how quickly it happens, things like that. That's why you would want to do that. Anything else? Good? Clear? Oh, yes, sir, quick.
We had just upgraded from 2010 to 2013.
Okay.
I think in 2010 started out as claims on.
2010 started as claims?
2010 started as claims.
Okay.
No classic.
Okay.
Upgraded to 2013, and I got that same nasty message.
Okay. Yep.
Everything works.
Yep.
But when I do the test SB content database, I still get that message.
Interesting. So he said in 2010 he was brave and he used claims in 2010, created a claims web app in 2013, and still got the nastygram here, but everything works. So this, and that's another good discussion. The symptom of if you don't fix this is that nobody but people with web app policies will be able to log in. So a classic, if you look in the database, and we don't have time to show it to you today, but if you look in the database for a classic database, users are stored as domain/user. So Contoso/Shane, Contoso/Todd. And when SharePoint says, hey, can this logged in user access this thing, that's what it looks at. When you're a claims user, you've got this claims identity. So now it's :W # click bang whatever, and then domain and username. So that's what IIS presents to SharePoint, which doesn't match domain/user. So if you attach this database, again, it'll all work. Regular users can't get in. A service account that's got a domain policy will be able to. The fact that your users can get in, you'd have to look at it and see what's going on. Quick one, and then we got to move on. Yes. Yeah, so he said that if you, when you run that check, if you have any users, well, that's the convert that fails, I think, not the attach. Yeah, so the convert will fail if you've got any references to users that are no longer in AD, but that's okay. Everything works, those users fail. Create and convert, okay.
So our friend pre-upgrade check, if you upgrade from 2007 to 2010, it's the same exact command. Pre-upgrade check is gone, right? That was our 2007 tool. But so to upgrade from 7 to 10, we use the test SP content database. We're going to use that as well here in 2010 to 2013 upgrades. And what the test SP content database does, to make it real simple, is when you run it, you're going to give it a database name, right? The database you brought from your 2010 farm. And it's going to say, all right, Mr. Database, what is all of the items that you expect in order to successfully render, right? What master pages are you looking for? What features? What solutions? What controls? And the database is going to spit out a long list of all the pieces it wants. Then the command is going to say, all right, Mr. Web App, referenced in the second piece, what are all of the things? Do you have all these things? Do you have this control, this master page, this feature, this solution? And then that's where we're going to see the error messages that Todd showed us a couple screens ago, right? The deltas. Here are all the things that are missing. So this is a great commandlet because it gives you that breakdown of here's what I want, here's what's not there, here's where authentication doesn't match, your schemas are bad, all types of error messages. Now, one of the things to talk about, because we don't have an example, but when you see those error messages, so say, for example, that you today in your 2010 farm have a feature inside of a solution that adds 17 image files, right? And that's your make it look pretty solution. When the pre-upgrade check runs, it's going to say, hey, you're missing this solution, you're missing this feature, you're missing these 17 individually listed files, right? So it's going to come back with 19 error messages because you forgot that one solution. So you have to look at those type of things, and you want to always work from the top down, right? You could manually go and find each one of those files and put it on your 2013 farm and fix the errors one by one. Or if you put the solution on the farm, then what? That solution will put the feature had those 17 files, and all of those error messages go away from fixing one. So always when you're looking through the error messages, try and find the root cause of the issue. Don't just be like, oh man, I gotta go get, Todd's ugly car.jpg and put it out there on the server. Because some people do. It's real easy to be like, I can fix that. I can copy a file from A to B. No, go find the feature, and then hopefully find the solution that the feature is in, and work your way up that way.
Yep. And so one of the tips that I always use anytime I open PowerShell, but it's very helpful with this particular thing, is I start the transcript. So the very first thing I do when I open a PowerShell window is I type start-transcript, and it creates a text file of all the things that I type and all the good things that PowerShell does for me. So in the case of this, when you run test SP content database, if you've got so many errors in that database that it runs through your buffer, your 300-line buffer, you scroll all the way to the top like Shane told you to, and you can't get to the top, you've got a text file out in your My Documents that is that session, so you can just go find that line and start from the top there. But that's also just really great for figuring out how things went, the other things like that. The other thing, and I think, I can't tell which slide it is. Do we have?
Which one?
The mount. Oh, okay, that's
yes,
the next one.
yeah.
Okay, so we'll cover that. So we're not going to hit this one very hard because we're kind of running out of time. But again, part of the emphasis for this session is ready for cloud usage. When you're looking at your features and your solutions, when you're doing any kind of upgrade, it's always a good time to reevaluate a couple of things. The first one being, is this crap? Do I need to upgrade this? Do I still use this solution? Do I still use this feature? If not, don't upgrade it. And now it's a good idea to say, okay, I've got this full trust code that does some stuff. Can I do this with the app model? Because that's kind of the way things are moving. And if I can rewrite this with the app model, if I can improve it, that's a good idea to do moving forward. Put that on my 2013 farm and move forward. But for the most part, anything that works, any full trust code that works in 2010 will work in 2013. Again, you should reevaluate it all, see if there's a better way to do it, see if 2013 adds it automatically, but it should just work. And hopefully, you have everything in WSP files. Hopefully, they're easy to get to. They're on your D drive or something. That's how Shane and I do it. We have a D install. All of our WSPs are in there. If you didn't, then it's kind of like the walk of shame. If you didn't save all your WSP files, then you have to go to Shane's blog. And there is shame in that. And he has a blog post that has some PowerShell on how to extract WSPs out of your farm. And you should feel very sad when you have to do that.
My one useful contribution.
The only good blog post in your entire life. But that will spit them all out to the file system, and then you can move them over to 2013. And all right, so we've talked about test SP content database. So we run test SP content database. We either get a thumbs up, or we get that one free error message about report viewer, or we get a whole list of errors. So most of the time when Shane and I do upgrades, we look through those list of errors and go, yeah, I'm just going to do it. And we hit up arrow and we replace test with mount, and we just see what happens. And
this is a true story.
I feel responsible to go up here and tell you good best practices. You should research, and you should test, and you should read, and you should do all this kind of stuff, and make a plan, and have committees and meetings and stuff. But in reality, what I do is I take that database, I run the test to just kind of give me an idea what I'm looking at. Up arrow, mount, let her rip. Let's see what happens. Because like the example that Shane gave about the feature that has the images and all that kind of stuff, that's an easy one to fix, but let's say we don't know exactly where that's at right now. We're going to mount that database anyway. It's not an upgrade blocking error. So we're going to mount that database anyway. It's going to update. Those images just aren't going to show up. That's not the worst thing ever. And then we're going to go to Shane's blog and feel very ashamed. Probably go shower with our clothes on later to get the stink of Shane's blog off of us. And we're going to add that solution to our farm, and we're going to activate that feature, and everything's just going to work. It's already upgraded. It's already there. We've both got stories about how we looked at a customer's environment, and it's X hundred gigs and X users and X whatever, and we quoted like 80 hours to upgrade it, and then we mounted the database, and it just worked. We're like, so...
What are you doing for the next 79 hours?
Yeah. How about those Dancing with the Stars? And especially if you've got a test environment, It's honest and for true. Just give it a shot. You lose nothing. If it mounts and it breaks, you just delete it. It's a database backup anyway. You've lost nothing.
Yeah, and that's one of the keys, right? Is there is no reason you shouldn't have tested this upgrade process about 100,000 times before you did it, right? Because it's real easy to create yourself a VM that has 2013 on it, and then grab last night's database backup from production, copy it over there, and just try it. Who cares if it blows up? Because all you got to do is delete the database, and you're right back to where you were, right? There's just no reason not to work through the process over and over and over and over again.
Yep.
If you're the achiever type, right, before you start that process, you should be able to, like, all right, Friday at 5:01, it's going to, you should be able to get it scripted down to the minute because it's going to be so consistent. You should have tested everything. You should have a minute by minute. This is what I'm doing. This is when I'm watching cat videos. This is when I have to pay attention.
How many cat videos I can watch?
Jimmy John's will be delivered at 9:07.
Yeah. So we're coming down. We got 10 minutes left.
Which way you want to go?
Well,
there's a fork in the road here.
Yeah, well, I was just going to say, what other slides do we want to hit?
Yeah, there's none there we have to. All right, so we'll just take a vote?
Well, I don't know if do we have time to do it?
Oh, we can get through it.
We can try. All right, so here's the thing. We've got a bunch of slides that will be available on the Ignite site if they're not already, that have all the stuff, and we've talked about things that are the same and commands that we've used and the upgrade process and the throttling and all that kind of stuff. Or we can try to upgrade a database now in the next 10 minutes and 22 seconds. And that demo also is recorded, so that's on YouTube if you want to do that. What do you guys think? Question and answer. We have a third option that has been presented to us, Shane. Questions and answers.
I can't do 3 options.
What say that you guys got questions? Been too shy to ask them already? Want to do that? All right. Let's do some questions then. Again, so the people that are running out, make sure you fill out your evaluations. Let us know how you did. Slides will be available on ignite.com. One of those slides has a link to the demo, so you can download it all.
Is there a third-party tool that you recommend for migration?
Which third-party tools do we recommend? So there's a fork in the road on that too, depending on how big your environment is and who you're already working with. Our 2 favorite tools of choice are AvePoint and ShareGate. AvePoint is good because they do migration and a whole lot of other stuff. So if you're already using them for some stuff, they're good. Or if you're thinking about it, ShareGate is exactly on the other end of the spectrum. They mostly just do migrations, though they do some other stuff recently, but it's really easy to use, super easy to use. I would put that in front of any end user and feel good about it.
Yeah, 2 different cost models as well with their products.
Yeah, I think I'm familiar with.
So ShareGate. Yes, sir.
Hey, Todd. We're in the process of starting our upgrade to 2013 from 2010.
Okay.
And one of the big things we were looking to turn on in 2013 is the remote blob storage.
Okay.
How do you see that fitting in like 2016? It seems like anti-cloud because they talked about in the session earlier, larger content databases.
Yep.
Being able to support that. So would you advise against RBS in 2013?
Yeah, so I think so RBS first came out in SharePoint 2007 as a thing called EBS like 5 years ago, and I think 100% of the time that somebody's asked me if they should use RBS, I've said no. So there's mainly one big thing about RBS, but kind of 2 problems. Number one is right now, today, if your entire farm bursts into flames, if you get me your content database, I will get you 100% of your content back 100% of the time. And we have both had that. We have had people come to us crying in tears. Everything's exploded. I'm like, do you have 1 backup? That's all I need. Everything's there. As soon as you start taking the blobs, the contents, which are the meat of SharePoint, and putting them in this and that and shoe boxes and this appliance over here, now recovery becomes really complicated. There's the chicken and the egg thing. Which do you recover? Are they still in sync? Can you still get that thing bolted in? We had one customer that was evaluating an RBS provider, and this was a few years ago. I'm sure they've gotten better. They were evaluating an RBS provider in a test environment. It was okay, but it wasn't worth the money to them. They couldn't get its hooks out. They couldn't uninstall it. It destroyed that farm. They just couldn't. So that's the thing. The other thing is RBS, you've got a performance concern now. So now you've got your web servers talking to your SQL servers and all that, but now SQL's talking to this this thing over here. If the network latency's slow, or if that whatever it is gets slow, now content's slow. I'm not a big fan of RBS. I'm a bigger fan of sizing your databases in a way that they perform well for you and that you can back them up and restore them in a timely fashion.
Yeah, the main problem why we thought about RBS is just because people say they want to get larger files into SharePoint.
Yep. Hey, I mean, it's, yeah.
No. Way over there on the right.
So I guess one
sorry.
final thing, if you do it, for goodness sakes, do it in a test environment that you can burn down if you test it.
How much data do you have? Rough ballpark.
It's about 7 terabytes.
So at least you're in the right ballpark to think about it.
Yeah.
You're allowed to think about it. You
Yeah,
don't get a hard no. You get a soft no.
You get a soft no.
I think he's beaten me for now. We've got 6 terabytes. So we're going to be moving 2010 to 2013 with about 40 content databases, trying to keep them all below 200 gig. So I'm interested in an explanation to still mount multiple databases at the same time on a slide.
Yep. So what you could not do in 2007 is if you were adding content databases or creating content databases, you couldn't do more than one at once. When you started one, when you did the STS-ADM attached content database, it would lock the config database, and you couldn't do anything else. Starting in 2010 and continuing in 2013, you can have multiple mount SP content database commands running at the same time, so you can do them in parallel there. The thing to look for when you're doing that is that mount process, and specifically the upgrade process, is almost entirely SQL I/O bound. So when you're trying to determine how many databases you can do at once, don't look at SharePoint, look at SQL, and look at your I/O and see what's going on there.
All right, going left. Yes, sir.
Yeah, we've got a new 2013 farm that we're building out strictly for ECM, and then most of our content is on a 2007 farm still that we're beginning to discuss migrating. So if we do end up going the route of a staging 2010 farm, right now it's a multi-server 07 farm. So that staging farm, do we have to mirror that, or can we can?
Yeah, so long story short, I would have, so right, he's saying, hey, I want to do a database attach from 7 and get to 13 as fast as possible. So 7's what it is. Hopefully it's Service Pack 2, or it's got to be Service Pack 2 or later.
It is, yeah.
So 10, I would have just a single server. And so I'm going to do a bad thing here. I'm going to take that single server SharePoint, and I am going to use this 2013 production SQL server to host the databases for that 2010 farm.
Okay.
Because what you're going to do, right, is you're going to back up 2007. You're going to store that database on the 2013 production. Your 2010 farm can see that. So then we're going to go to 2010. We're going to mount SB content database there. We got a 2010 database. Unmount it. Burn this VM down. 2013 already attached, so you don't have to move the databases, no backups, no I/O transactions, and then now you can do the mount here. Sound effects are for free. You get to SharePoint 2013.
Cool, thanks.
Yep. Yes, ma'am.
I have 2 questions. The first is our intranet portal is still, even though we're in 2010 Foundation, it's in UI 3 because of the skin we had.
Okay.
Do I need to get that to UI 4 before I go to 2013?
Yeah, so she's saying she's got 2010, but she's got the 2007 look and feel. Yes, you have to move that to 2010 before you can bump it to 2013.
Okay, and the other question I have is that we still are on Office 2007 products, including Outlook. What will be the pain points that will come if I move to 2013 SharePoint, but still have 2007 Office products?
Yeah, so there used to be a document that Microsoft had that was like a good, better, best thing that said if you've got this version of SharePoint and this version of Office, whatever, it will work, but a bunch of the cool integration things won't work. Like your users might get popped for authentication when they think, but functionally it will work. They just won't have all the bells and whistles.
Yeah, the way that I always think of it is anything that works today with 7 to 10, most of that should all still work. The only caveat might be if you go to claims, I don't think that Office 2007 is going to be like, what the hell are you asking me to do? So that'd be the scenario I would test, is authentication.
All right, thank you.
Yep. You, sir.
Okay, so I have 2 questions. The first one is, assuming that content databases upgrade perfectly to another environment, how do you do the switch from, I will say, test to production from the DNS perspective? Because in production, you have one DNS, and in test or QA, whatever, you have another DNS. So how do you exactly move those new content databases that are 2013 aware into production?
Well, you would move them from 2010 production to 2013 production. So you would have you had test and QA, you would have a third farm, and in test and QA, you just said, okay, when I attach my databases, it takes 9 hours and whatever. Friday night, we're shutting 2010 production down. We're setting all the databases in 2010 to read only, so they can still access, they can't change anything. In the background, we're backing them up, we're moving them to this new 2013 production thing, we're mounting them, we're doing this stuff, and then we're switching DNS over after we've maintained.
Okay, perfect. And the second question is, what are the typical problems that we found when we migrate a 2010 environment with Kerberos to 2013 environment with
20
Kerberos authentication.
With what kind of
Kerberos.
Kerberos.
Yeah.
It should still work.
Yeah, it's getting your SPNs right? It's because you're going to change service accounts from 2010 to 2013, and we know that we can't have the same service principal name for 2 different accounts. So it's just working through the fine details of that, but there shouldn't be any issues as long as you understand SPNs well enough to know I'm changing, this account, this web app account is now associated with this URL. I've got to remove it from the old web app.
Yep. So I think it's set SPN-X that looks for duplicates.
Yes.
So if it doesn't work, go to one of your domain controllers, set SPN-X. It will look for the dupes. Like he said, chances are you've got the same SPN in 2 accounts. That's a big no-no. Remove it out of your 2010.
Cool, thanks.
Sir?
Search. I have suffered personally from this problem. We see that we need 80 gigs system drive, et cetera, and then you'll find a link somewhere else which is quite often obscure that search needs a pretty big size drive, separate drive, which we often tend to miss. Do you agree?
Yeah, so Todd and I think about indexes, right? That's what really it is, right? It's going to put the index somewhere. On your search servers, we absolutely want to have a separate drive, so the F drive, right? And we want to put the files there. And that one, it's not an 80 gig, it's a however many gigs you need.
Yeah.
So question is, is there any direct correlation between your content size and the...
I've seen there's Microsoft papers and numbers out there.
They say 5 to 10%, and we could get into the weeds on why it is, but it matters tremendously what your type of content is. Yeah. It matters on file size. Is it text files? Is it Word documents? 5 to 10% is about as best we can give you. And that's a complete wild guess.
So wait, hang on. So it's noon, so we need to
get
go
out.
over. So we'll say stop and thank you. We'll come ask us questions up here.
Yeah, those of you, we got to go down to the booth.
Oh.
So if we don't get your questions answered up here, Rackspace booth 233 will be down there this afternoon.
All right. Thank you, guys.